Welcome to the Hearts Entwined podcast. In this podcast, we'll be having discussions around the secrets which attract lasting, healthy, fulfilling relationships, creating a healthy mindset, and what women should know and understand about men. Introducing your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts, relationship expert, trainer, speaker, and best-selling author of the Cupid's Bow technique. Lyn's mission is to have a positive impact in reducing divorce, domestic violence, and suicide.
Welcome to the Hearts Entwined podcast. This is your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts, and today I've got a guest that's all the way across the other side of the world from me, because I'm at the moment in Spain, in Europe, and Ronnie Thomson, who is my guest today, is all the way in Australia. So welcome, Ronnie.
Thank you so much, Lyn. Cheers for having me.
You're so welcome. And Ronnie, you are a mindset and marriages communications expert, and it's been my pleasure to notice that you're very, very, very skilled at explaining how communication works in relationships and how that can actually really be the pinnacle to enhancing and refreshing the romance in our relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. Communication for me is a huge, it's a huge thing, and I never actually realised the importance of it. Because we talk, right? That everyone talks in their relationships and in their marriage, with their friendships, whatever it might be. But it wasn't until a couple of years ago I was basically done with talking. Pretty much. I was talking to my husband. I was sharing the feelings. I was doing all of the, the wifely things, and it just wasn't working. It just was not working. I hit a point where I was just so done talking, and we were sort of at, I guess, the end of our tether, or I was especially. He didn't really realise at the time that there was any issue. And so, it kind of come down to the crunch, really, where it was like, we either do the marriage counselling thing or this is just not going to work. And it was during those counselling sessions that it became very apparent to me in the early days that there was just so much more to communication in the relationship than just talking. And so, after that, it just completely changed the game for us. We did the work, we put in the effort. And 2 years on, we're happier than ever. We're back to the in love phase, and it's just absolutely amazing. So communication has really been a huge part of hubby's and my relationship, and that's where the passion extended on then to helping people. I've always loved helping people, but being really specific, in relationships and just offering a new way to get across their point and get what we want and what we need out of a relationship in other ways than just talking, Yeah,
and I think, for me, that has been also, a massive learning curve, not only in what is effective communication, but understanding that there is an obvious difference in the way men understand and communicate and women understand and communicate. Has that been your experience as well, Ronnie?
Oh, absolutely, Lyn, absolutely. I'll never forget this line. Oh, my God. I'll never forget this one line that our counsellor said in our first group session together. So our first session where it was both hubby and I in the room. And he actually, it was just ragingly obvious after he said it, but it was something that I'd never heard before, and it stuck with me. And he said to me, he said to both of us, men need sex to feel loved, and women need to feel loved in order to want to have sex. And it just occurred to me then, like, wow, okay, this is like a big turning point. So, basically how it started was hubby just noticed that the sex was toning down, and it had basically stopped. And for me, he didn't seem like he was listening to us. And in those first early days of counselling and putting in the work and everything, the counsellor actually explained a lot of the differences between the way that men and women, communicate. And it comes down to how how we're loved, how much love we have in the tank, pretty much. And so, for me, when hubby wasn't listening, that was depleting, that was taking love out of my tank. And when I wasn't, being intimate with him, then it was taking love out of his tank, pretty much, So we both had this inner feeling, I suppose, like we weren't being loved, like we weren't being loved by our other half or by each other. But it was not spoken about. We didn't have that serious heart-to-heart and really step into that, what would have been an uncomfortable situation or an uncomfortable conversation about why it is that we weren't feeling loved. And along the journey, and doing a lot of the work and figuring out the different ways of communicating, yeah, goodness, it's been such a learning curve, because men tend to sort of, I guess you'd say, revert or kind of step back and kind of go into a silence, I suppose. They go into their proverbial cave, I suppose you'd say. Yes. And they, and they don't come out of it. So I don't know if you've had this experience, yes, Lyn, but they just, oh, goodness me. Their way of communicating is not actually communicating.
That is their way of communicating, isn't it? And problem solving is to, like you say, they're very autocratic and they withdraw. And if they've got an issue, a challenge or a problem, they like to think they can solve it for themselves. And the way they do that is, like you say, is to stop communicating and go to their cave or their quiet place. And then we think, and start panicking as women that there's a problem or issue. And it might not even be around us. It just means, it just might be around something they've got at work going on maybe. But we then try and probably, want to get close to them at a time where they definitely don't want it. And it's not about not wanting you. It's about, they've got other things on their mind they need to resolve first.
Yeah, for sure. They seem to think that they can just figure things out on their own. And sometimes that very well is the case. They do need to, like you said, withdraw and have that time to really mull things over in their mind and think about things quite in-depthly. They need to get the little flow chart, mapped out in their head of, if we have this conversation and this is what she says, then what's the next answer going to be? And, they really kind of mull these things over in their mind. And during that process, we think that they're going quiet. We with us, so we think we've done something wrong, or push them too hard. And in some cases, we actually can do that. We actually can make it worse by pushing them for an answer, and nagging at them about, why won't you answer me? Have you thought about this? I really need an answer. And why aren't you talking to me? And so when we push to, to our husbands, to get feedback and to understand what's going on in his mind and in their heads, we can actually make the whole thing a whole lot worse, it turns out, and I used to be like that because I didn't understand that he needed to withdraw. I didn't know that he needed that time because he never told me. They go silent and they don't actually tell us. And so, a big piece of advice that I give to my male clients is, guys, if you need to withdraw, if you need that time by yourself to just be silent, just tell your wife, just tell your partner that you just need some time to think about it, and you will get back to her. And it's okay. I still love you. I just need some time, to sort this out in my head, so that she knows you're definitely going to come back. You're definitely going to talk about it again, but she knows that you're holding space for her, and she knows that she's still loved. And so that definitely helps out my ladies as well, because then they can expect that they are still loved and they do just need to give him time. And so, during that time, while we're letting them have their space, then we can go off and, chat to our girlfriends if that's what we need to do. Because often that is what we sort of tend to do. If we've got a problem, we really verbalize it and we really get it out there and chat about it. And it's often during that chat that we're verbalizing everything and not just letting it stew up in our minds that we come up with the answer. We find we finally find the answer to, you know, what was the problem. And, you know, we vent and we get it out with our girlfriends, and that's just the way that women tend to communicate, you know, and sort out issues is by talking. So very, very different ways of communication between men and women. And when we aren't giving our other halves or understanding where they're at, and that's when, you know, big problems can start to arise then, because we're just not, you know, allowing space for the needs and the wants in that relationship.
Oh, certainly, and it's judging, I suppose, you know, what's appropriate at any one moment. If you can see that he does need that space, you know, it's so helpful for him to know that you understand he needs that space, and it's not about, you know, whether he loves you anymore or whether he doesn't. You know, it 9 times out of 10, it will be just because he needs to work it out in his way as a man, the way men do. And like you say, a good alternative to that is when he's doing that, when he is withdrawing, is to not panic, but to go and chat to your girlfriends, because that's what women do. Men don't do that, you know. This is what women do. If we need to unload and figure out our problems, it's quite common and natural for women to share and speak to their girlfriends. And just by talking, you know, that they start to feel better. You know, they don't need fixing, which is quite often what men perceive when we start talking and wanting them to listen. They think, oh, we want this problem solving. We don't necessarily. We just want to be heard because it makes us feel better to be heard.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that is the thing with men too, is, you know, God bless their cotton socks. They just want to fix everything. And it's so beautiful, you know, when it comes to the door, you know, that needs fixing because it might have been slammed one too many times, or, you know, putting the cat door on properly so that the cat can get in and out outside, you know, whatever it is. I swear when we want them to actually fix something, they don't want a bar of it. But when we just want to vent, that is the time when they feel like they need to fix something. And when they can't fix it, and a lot of the times, you know, if it's an emotional stress that we've got going on, or we do just want to talk out a problem, verbalize it, you know, get it out there, you know, they can't help us. Sometimes it's just, we just need to verbalize it, you know, so not actually wanting them to fix it, they actually can't fix it. But when we don't let them know that, they feel like a failure. You know, men tend to take on this, I guess, not challenge, but, you know, stress of their own, because they can't fix it for you. They see you're in pain. They see you're overwhelmed, frustrated, upset, whatever it is, and they just want to fix it. And if they can't, then that's when, you know, they can sort of tend to go silent, go into their cave, withdraw. Or there's the opposite side of the scale as well, where they can get a bit defensive, you know, and they can get a bit like, well, what do you want me to do? You know, and then the tone starts coming out, and then it can really quickly escalate into an argument, you know, or into a heated discussion, and it all just stems from a misunderstanding about communication, you know, and the way that we deal with problems differently as men and women.
Yeah, most certainly. I've been, you know, in those situations so many times, and now I know, you know, that he needs that space to figure out and withdraw when he's got an issue that he needs to figure out. And 9 times out of 10, it isn't anything to do with me. It's usually you know, other stuff going on. And
absolutely.
Now as well, he knows, you know, that sometimes, you know, the girls' friends aren't on hand to have a chat to. All he has to do is listen, and I'll start to feel better. You know, he doesn't have to try and fix anything. He just needs to just be present and just listen. And he's starting to learn that more and more now, which is great, you know, because eventually, you know, I'll finish what I've got to say, and he can see straight away I'm starting to feel and sound a lot better, and he didn't have to try and fix anything.
Absolutely. Oh, yes, 100% agree with that. And I'm so grateful that we did, you know, looking back, we did really kind of, you know, get specific about, you know, what we wanted and what we wanted in our goals in the future for our relationship. And a big thing for that for me was communication. And I'm just so grateful for my own husband, because he was on board with that. And he realized as well the differences in the way that we communicate. And so, you know, he's made a very conscious effort since then, in the last 2 years, that if I'm worked up about something, if I'm frustrated, if I just want to have, even if it comes down to a serious conversation, you know, everything gets put away. You know, he stops what he's doing. You know, the phone goes down. Preferably, you know, the kids aren't around us, so it's after we've gone to bed, whatever it is. And there's that active listening, you know, and this is where I sort of, you know, have to explain a bit of a difference with my couples, because sometimes they just don't understand the difference between listening and then active listening, you know, and actually being involved in the conversation. Because I know for my husband, he'd appear like he wasn't listening to me, and now I'd get frustrated, and then I'd look at him and go, "Are you listening to me?"
Yes.
And he'd sort of look at me like, you know, oh goodness, excuse me. And so then and the thing is, he could repeat back to me word for word what I'd said. He knew exactly what I was talking about, but he wasn't actually taking it in. You know, he wasn't actually taking it in to a point where I felt like I was being heard, you know, because mentally, you know, he wasn't really actively listening to me. And so, you know, a lot of the times now he'll put everything down, he'll put it away, and he'll sit there and be absolutely present with me. And even if it's only 10 minutes, you know, or 15 minutes a day, it's just made an absolute huge difference in the way I feel loved. And so, you know, if I feel loved, if the love tank's full, then, you know, obviously I'm going to want to love him a lot more as well. So it starts off with communication, being a lot more effective, taking into account what your partner needs and wants out of the relationship. And then it has a flow-on effect as well, you know, and ultimately it really just does start with ourselves as an individual, and making sure that we are making that conscious effort for our partners, whatever that may be, as far as whatever their love language is, you know, and really working within those guidelines.
Yeah, I love what you said there about mentioning about, you know, how guys can show up and be present. And I do know, you know, because they're quite solitary creatures who like to focus on one task at a time, you know, it's generally, yes, you know, accepted, I think, that women are better at multitasking and men are more solitary, focused on one task at a time. And I think, you know, that is accepted as a big difference between men and women. And so I also wanted to let women know that, you know what, sometimes if he is focused on whatever task, he may not be available to listen to you right in that moment. So a good way to approach, if you do want his full presence and to be fully heard, is to say, you know, would you, when you've got a minute, spend some time with me? I'd like us to talk. And, you know, it gives him time then to finish off whatever task he's focused on currently, rather than get irritated or probably not be present enough for you to actively listen in that time.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I couldn't agree more. And a lot of the times, yeah, that does still happen, you know, and I know too, because we've sort of been through it and we understand the differences. You know, a lot of the time, once you hit a point and you do understand the differences between the communication of men and women, it makes it a lot easier to gauge those times on when to have a serious conversation as well, you know. So I personally, if hubby's really sort of focused and honed in on what he's doing, I'll purposely not say anything really, you know. I'll just like talk about what he's actually working on, you know, and show interest in what he's doing. And so then it, you know, loosens him up. He feels comfortable. He might be teaching me how to change the brake pads on the car or whatever he's doing, you know, showing interest in what he's up to. And that in itself is a big way to connect as well, you know. So even though we want to mull stuff, you know, we want to verbalize and get stuff out in the open and we want to talk about it, sometimes that the timing is just a little bit off. So, definitely making a date with him, if it's a serious conversation, making a date and scheduling it in, like, hey, babe, when we put the kids to bed tonight, can we grab a cuppa and just sit down and chat? It's been a while since we've just had a really good chat, and would that be okay? Or, have you got anything on this weekend? I thought about, maybe dropping the kids with some friends and we go out to lunch and just chat, so making a conscious effort to schedule that time together is a big one as well, not just for conversations, but just to be in each other's presence and not have anything else around you, as a pressing matter sort of thing. I do find that has been a big help as well. And so, even if they're not physically available at the time to talk to you and to listen, to actively listen, there is definitely ways around, you being heard, you being able to get everything out that you want to get out, and also showing some interest in what he's doing as well, understanding where he's at makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I like what you said earlier about mentioning love languages, because I know that that's quite a key part of what you teach and what you explain. So would you be happy to share a little bit about love languages and how that plays out within the dynamics of men and women?
Yeah, for sure. I am a huge fan of love languages, and it's it's so funny. At the time of our counselling, we'd been married for 7 years at that point, and not once had anyone said anywhere, not even not even our marriage celebrants had anything about love languages. It just, I don't know, even just 2 years ago for me, it didn't seem to be a mainstream thing. And so now I'm seeing it a lot more, but I'm not sure if it's because I'm in the industry of marriage coaching or if it is becoming a lot more apparent. But we'd never heard of it 2 years ago. We'd not heard of this love language thing. And Dr. Gary Chapman, bless his sweet soul for developing the love languages. It literally was an absolute game changer for us. A lot of where our frustration started, I suppose, was because the main issues there, when everything really came to crunch for hubby and I was pregnant at the time, and we've got a fair bit of acreage here, a bit of land. We had lots of bindies and prickles in our lawn, and I just, I wanted them sprayed. Our little girl was getting prickles in her foot, and it was just frustrating me. And I wasn't going to go and play with poison because I was pregnant. And I kept asking him, babe, can you please spray the prickles? Can you please spray the bindies? Anyway, and it never happened. I thought he wasn't listening to me. And when it came down to the crunch, that actually caused a lot of arguments and a lot of unresolved issues there. And we discovered during our counselling these love languages. And when we did the quiz, I was an absolute raging acts of service. It was my primary love languages, and it scored well above any of the others. And so it just made so much sense to us then, and especially to my husband, that it was so important for me, for him to spray the prickles. It wasn't just the bindies. It wasn't just the prickles in our daughter's feet. This was so much more than that. It was a way for him to show me that he loved me. And, it seems so obvious now in hindsight, but at the time we didn't know that. And so what started as, just me thinking he wasn't listening to me, it actually also too had a big flow-on effect, because his primary love language was quality time. So what was actually happening is, before we knew about these love languages and before we knew what category we fell into as individuals, is, I was asking him to do stuff to help me out, and he wasn't, but he wanted to spend all this time with me, so he would get frustrated with me when I just, I couldn't sit down on the couch with him and watch a movie because I was too busy doing the housework. I had the the washing to fold, and I had the dishes to do, and I had lunches to make for the next day because I was working full time as well. I was pregnant, I was doing the kindy run, and so he couldn't understand. He'd get frustrated with me because it appeared to him like I didn't want to spend time with him, but to me it appeared to me that he didn't want to help me, and so it became this sort of vicious cycle really, where we both weren't getting what we needed out of the relationship and ultimately what we wanted. So the other one was also suffering. It wasn't just us thinking we were hard done by. The other party was also really upset about it because, if he wasn't helping me, the last thing I'd want to do is spend time with him. He'd annoyed me. Just looking at him annoyed me sometimes because I'm like, he just, and even worse when you're pregnant, like the hormones are raging, sometimes you just don't even want to look at them because just their breathing annoys you. And so we kind of hit this point where I was just like, I didn't want to spend time with him, I just wanted to get stuff done so then I could sit down and relax my weary, swollen feet. And it was the same with him. He was feeling very unloved because I wasn't sitting down and I wasn't spending that quality time with him. And to him, it was just, I was constantly doing stuff. Why is she constantly doing all of these things? Just sit down and relax. And so, it was literally 1 week of us being conscious and taking conscious action and steps and working within our love language. It just made a huge, huge difference because before I was doing all the things for him, expecting him to notice. So I was mowing the lawn, because he didn't have a chance around work. And he wouldn't say anything, there would be no recognition for it. And because I was working in my own love language, but I wasn't working in his. No. And that's where the big turning point was for us. He was wanting to spend time with me. He was, he even went as far one time as, organising a babysitter to take our little girl. And I was frustrated, weirdly enough, because, I was already cranky at him because he hadn't sprayed the bindies. He hadn't sprayed the prickles yet, and he wanted, in hindsight, I think, oh, that's so silly, Ronnie, what were you thinking? But at the time, I remember being really frustrated going, we're going out for all of these hours and when we could be at home getting this stuff done, so we were working in our own love languages, expecting the other person to be happy about it. And it just wasn't working that way. And so literally within a week of us knowing the difference between our love languages and actually working in our partner's language, then it completely changed the game. So we made a deal, we made a schedule, and it sounds very, to some people it might sound a little bit uptight, like, oh, really scheduling things in? Can't you just go with the flow? But for us, it worked at the time to be able to develop a habit. So, for me, he would start helping me fold the clothes. He would do the dishes and I would dry them. One would clean up after dinner while the other one bathed our little girl, so it wasn't just all of these household duties only on me. And so he became a lot more active around the house with the household duties. And that even come down to, putting the washing on, hanging it out on the line, helping me fold it, because he discovered that I had a standard for the house, and I wasn't going to get a chance to clean it the next day. I hadn't had a chance that morning. And so I'd had this space of time after putting our toddler to bed that, I wanted the house in a certain, I guess, specification, and I wanted the washing done, and I wanted the dishes clean on the sink, and, all of that. So he figured out, and we scheduled in, okay, let's get these jobs done together. He helped me, and he put in that really conscious effort to make sure that it was at a standard that I was happy with. And I literally got it done in a third of the time that I would have by doing it by myself. So what then happened was, because we got all of these jobs done and I was now officially happy, and he showed me love by helping me with those acts that I would normally be doing on my own. In turn, I had more time to then spend with him. So it worked in really well as a schedule thing, but it was an absolute game changer because I actually wanted to spend time with him then. You know, that's where it really, really changed for us because, you know, he just showed me love by doing the folding. You know, like I couldn't see my couch before. Absolutely. It was a huge win-win. And so, you know, I could see my couch again and all the clothes that cluttered it before are now folded and being put away. And I didn't even have to ask him to do it. You know, we literally had one conversation about him helping me more around the house and he just did it. And in turn, I wanted to spend that time with him. So, you know, we would go to bed early and we'd watch that movie or we'd play a game of cards together. You know, we'd sit down and have that cuppa and you know, a really connected, deep and meaningful conversation. And so that for him was filling up his love cup.
I would like to just go on that point where you did have that conversation around, you know, needing him to help out, because I think this is another important point that women take for granted is that, you know, within womankind, so to speak, we don't need, you know, to ask somebody to help us. Women just naturally help each other out, whereas it's different for
That's
men.
Right.
You know, they are perceived amongst themselves to be perfectly competent and doing everything they need to do. You know, and they don't ask for help unless they specifically want it. So quite often they're totally oblivious unless you ask them for help that you actually need it. They just think that you're perfectly fine doing everything. Believe it or not, you know, that's another difference between the sexes, because, you know, men amongst themselves, you know, don't do that with each other.
No, they don't, exactly, and that is right. You know, if they want help or they need help, then they begrudgingly ask for it. But we as women just, you know, we get on with it, you know, and a lot of the times too, I do feel like as women, we're a little bit more pedantic than men usually are. So a lot of the times, you know, I've actually compared, I love my husband to bits, but I have compared him to my toddler sometimes, you know, because she wants to help me don't cause such a big mess, you know. So when we compare that with our husbands doing the dishes, you know, where they use too much water or they use too much dish soap and then it takes too long to dry and then there's a residue on them and, you know, whatever it is, sometimes, you know, in the household we can get really pedantic about the way things are. Like I used to get really uptight about the way that my shirts were hung on the line. I don't know why. I think it was a hormonal thing. But if there's something that hits us a little bit in the OCD section, like the way that the pegs went on my shoulders on the you know, on a shirt, and then it would pucker because it's dried that way underneath the peg, you know, little things like that. So sometimes we sort of get a little bit impatient with them and just go, you know what, don't worry about it, I'll do it myself. You know? So, and that's like music to their ears, because they're like, sweet, we're getting out of this work, you know. But meanwhile, we're stewing on the inside as well, because it's like, why can't they just do it properly? You know, why can't they just do it this way? We think that there's, you know, everyone should do it our way because that it makes sense, but it's not always the case. You know, to them, the clothes are still hung on the line and they're still going to dry. Whereas, you know, we look at it and go, you can hang, you know, 3 towels with four pegs. It doesn't have to be six pegs, you know, like we've got this all worked out in our minds and a specific way that we like the bench, you know, organized or whatever it is. And so sometimes we don't ask them for that help until we're already stewing and we're already bursting at the seams because they're not helping us. You know, because we've got this specific way of doing things. So it can be a little bit hard, but I always challenge my ladies to let go of the process in a way, you know, because ideally what you want is the outcome, you know. So if you're still going to get there and you're still going to get the desired outcome, like hubby hanging the clothes on the line, it's sometimes hard, but let go of the process, you know, and how long he's taking to do it. And just step back into gratitude that he is actually doing it, you know. So that was a big thing for me, definitely, in that situation.
Yeah, because otherwise he's not going to, if he's going to feel as though he's not appreciated.
That's right.
And he's just going to be criticised because he's doing it differently to you.
Absolutely.
You know, not to your standard.
Yeah.
Then he's not going to be motivated or inspired to help in the future, is he?
That's right, exactly. You know, and just recognition as well, recognition and acknowledgement, because I remember sometimes, this was pre-counselling, and, you know, when everything would quickly escalate, I remember getting home from work one day, and this happened a couple of times. I get home from work, I had my toddler, you know, she'd been at kindy all day, I'd been at work all day, but he was on an RDO. And I get home and things didn't look all that much different in the house, but, you know, he'd been off all day. And I'd walk in the door and he would say something like, you know, I did the dishes today. Or, you know, I vacuumed the floor today, babe. And I just sort of look at him and think, wow, do you want a Mickey Mouse badge? You know, like, really?
They do, don't they?
And they
you know,
do.
He's a man, he wants that praise and recognition and
Absolutely.
appreciation.
Oh my God, yes. And I just remember thinking in my head, oh, I'm just like, really? You know, how many things do I do in a day? And I don't get recognised for it, and I don't get a thank you. So why am I supposed to thank you? And I remember thinking these things. And in hindsight, I just think, oh, Ronnie, like, you should have just, you know, recognised those things. And what it come down to is, in our counselling as well, is, you know, the counsellor at the time was so lucky to get a good one first, because some people go through 3 and 4 and they still don't click with their person. And so we were really lucky, but he pointed out to both of us, that he pointed out to my husband and said, you know, like, Ronnie does these things every day, you know, on a daily basis. Do you thank her for them? And it really, really did sort of make him realise, like, oh, actually, you know what? No, like, because it's just a standard thing that we do, right? We as women and mums, we just get on with it and we just get things done. And so it becomes very quickly an expectation that it's just going to happen. And so, you know, we love the recognition just as much as what they do, you know, for our 20 things compared to their one thing that they don't usually do. And it was the opposite, you know, same thing for me, but just on an opposite side of the coin, where he sort of said to me, you know, do you recognise these things? I'm like, well, I do see them. You know, I get home and I see that he's vacuumed the floor, you know, but I just sort of think, like, well, yeah, he lives here too. He should be vacuuming the floor if I'm at work all day, you know, like, if it needs vacuuming, just vacuum it. Because we as, you know, mums and wives and women in general, we just get it done. If something needs to be done, we just do it. Whereas for them, if it's not something that they generally do, they are actually putting in a big effort. So actually acknowledging that and thanking them for it, as much as it might hurt us to start off with, you know, it's huge. You know, it's huge to them.
Absolutely,
so
it is. You know, they want to make us happy.
Yeah.
And actually, they want to win. They want to be your hero. So if you can make him feel like he is winning with you and making you happy, and that's the thing, isn't it, with men?
Absolutely, for sure. And it was so, it's so humbling now, where our now 3.5-year-old, so she was 18 months at the time, we sit down at night now at the dinner table, and she will, you know, she's taken notice of who cooked dinner, and she'll actually look at either of us, whoever cooked, and say, you know, thank you, Mummy, for cooking dinner, you know, or thank you, Daddy, for cooking dinner, because we started doing that with each other. You know, we started recognising a simple thing like cooking dinner, where it was going to happen. It didn't matter who did it. It was going to happen. We thanked the other person for doing it, and we took that small amount of time out of our day to acknowledge the effort of the other person. And so she has now even just picked up on that, us doing it with each other. And it is just so beautiful for her to go and have a sleepover with, you know, whether it be friends or Nana and Poppy, you know, and they'll actually say, oh my God, everyone's so beautiful. She thanked us for cooking dinner. It's like, and Chris and I, we just look at each other and just think, oh, wow. Like, you know, so it's not just about the recognition and the acknowledgement in between us as a husband and wife and as partners, but it has a flow-on effect of gratitude that other people pick up on. And kids are like sponges, you know, they pick up on these things, and it's really beautiful to see just changing one simple thing between us and in our marriage, and being grateful for the other party. It's had that flow-on effect with our kids as well. And so it's just a win-win situation when you can really step back and take that little bit of time and effort to acknowledge and recognise the efforts of your partner, no matter how big or small they are.
Most certainly. I couldn't agree more. So with that, Ronnie, we're coming to the close of the episode. So what I'd really love is for you to share what is your main contact for any listeners tuning in that would love to connect with you.
Yeah, so you can find me on my personal page, which is just Ronnie Thomson, and it's Thomson without a P, Thomson. But I do have a private Facebook group where I put all of my really sort of quite valuable content, hints, tips, suggestions, all of that sort of thing. It's in a private Facebook group called Mindsets and Marriages - with Ronnie Thomson. So if you find that one, by all means, you know, ask to join, send yourself an invite. If you've got anyone who needs, you know, some hints and tips and suggestions, feel free to invite them along as well. There's a few access questions just so I can help determine, you know, what my audience and what my members need help with, so I can, you know, cater the content to them. But that's probably the best way to get in contact. And you know, join the group, have a look around. I've got some free trainings in there all around communication, argument, and resolving the arguments, I suppose. That's probably the best way, or you're more than welcome to connect on my personal page as well. But all the gold is in that private Facebook group.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, and I'll make sure all your contact information plus your personal bios in the show notes as per usual.
Fabulous.
On that note, so I just want to finally thank you very much again for sharing your insights and wisdom. It was really fascinating and very interesting conversation, and I'm sure, you know, there's little nuggets of gold in there for the audience to take away with them today. So thank you very much again, Ronnie. Oh,
thank you so much, Lyn, for having me. And I do really hope that, whoever's listening got some value out of that, and feel free to reach out.
Well, great stuff. So just to close off the episode, as always, true love starts with opening our hearts. So until next time, goodbye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Hearts Entwined podcast. You can follow Lyn via the Facebook group Two Hearts Entwined, or search Lyn Smith, inspirational speaker, at LinkedIn, or email lyn@hearts-entwined.com. That's LYN@hearts-entwined.com. Remember, true love starts with opening our hearts.